as we get ready for National Signing Day next Wednesday, the coach has dropped by, our good friend Carl Reed. Coach, good to see you, and can't wait to dig in. So we're trying to figure out what's happening right now. You got the portal open, you have the signing day coming up, you got chaos everywhere. Give us your insight and intel into how insane this time of the year is.
Well, it's insane because you got several things going on right now, Paul. You got the transfer portal opening, you have teams getting ready for bowl games, and you have high school recruiting as we're also closing in on National Signing Day. For example, you saw Malik Murphy from the University of Texas go into the portal, and he's not going to be able now to participate with the University of Texas in the college football playoffs. So the timing of it all is also a hindrance to certain programs as you're also trying to make sure that you're fielding a competitive team for the bowl game.
So, Carl, in a situation like Malik, I know that do they have any grace if they're in the playoffs? Because
right now, it is unfair a little bit because of the timing of it. He obviously was a big part of that Texas team this year. He came in as a starter when Quinn Ewers was down and kept their streak intact. And it's really an unfortunate situation that he's being forced right now to choose going to a new school versus finishing the season with his football team. But that's just the way that the calendar has mapped out. If he wants to get his visits in and get an opportunity to meet with the coaches of the program he would be going to next, he has to do it during this time period.
Let's talk about the danger of the portal. I mentioned a couple hours ago, I had a conversation with a young man today who, and you know this story 1,000 times, he goes into the portal and finds no place to go. How often do you hear that story?
Well, I hear it a lot. And what happens and what guys need to understand as media outlets, whether it's you guys or whether it's us at 24/7 Sports, we're covering the creme de la creme, the top players in the game, the guys that it looks glamorous when they switch rosters, they get these big NIL deals. But the vast majority of these guys are hurting themselves by moving along. They're hurting themselves by giving away their education, by giving away their scholarship and their roster spot. And they're going in here with misinformation. They're going in here with no information. And they're going in there in a situation where they're harming their future. And they don't have, a lot of them don't have anybody that they can talk to or anybody that can guide them through whether or not that decision even makes sense.
How awkward, or maybe they're not awkward, are these conversations with the coaches after the season finally ends? Because the coaches want to meet with everyone. Some guys they don't want. Some guys they'll do anything to keep. What happens in those meetings?
Well, it depends on whether the coach wants you to stay or not. I was talking to a young man and the coach the other night where the coach really doesn't want the guy to stay on the team. He wants his scholarship. He wants the guy to move along because he's not going to play. But at the same time, he promised his family that he was going to get him a degree from this prestigious institution, but he really doesn't want the guy in his program. So his hope through his conversation with the player is that the player sees the writing on the wall for himself and he just vacates the premises so the coach doesn't have to deal with it. And so I think those conversations do become uncomfortable because when that player can go and get information from other people, then it puts him and the coach in a real tricky situation. But a lot of those guys are getting pushed out of programs, whether they're getting pushed out directly or indirectly. The language that the coaches are using to manipulate some of the kids and the players in this situation can become extreme.
And certainly, Coach, we talked a lot with you over the years about your friend Deion Sanders. He had to do that, but I mean, there's a lot of negativity coming out of that program. I don't know how legitimate it is. You know Deion, you talk to him. What's going on out there?
Well, in his situation, he's such a lightning rod because everybody wants to talk about him and the lights are on him. It's like he says all the time, the fan only blows when you're hot. And so being in a situation where he left the HBCU program in Jackson State that a lot of people were hoping that he stayed and kind of rejuvenated that entire landscape. So you got a lot of negativity for that. Then he did something unprecedented. He flipped the roster from a transfer portal standpoint. Then they started off really hot, but they failed down the stretch, mainly because they couldn't protect the quarterback with the offensive line. So what did he do last week? He got a bunch of offensive line commitments, guys that have started from other programs, and the number one offensive lineman in the high school ranks in Jordan C. Time.
So speaking of high school, we spend so much time on the portal, but what is your sense and how important is this National Signing Day? Because it just seems a little less important than it's been in the past because of the portal opening.
Oh, it's still very important. It's still what you have to build your program around. You have to start with high school players. Now, the top 100 to probably 200 players in the country, the transfer portal hasn't affected those guys. They're still going to big time universities, they're still going to the big time programs. It's the guys who used to sneak in after that. You can sneak into a group of five program, maybe even a lower tier power five program. Those spots now are almost exclusively going to guys in the transfer portal. So what is happening is if you're a player coming out of high school, you're probably going to go to the school that your film says that you should be at in the first place. So I don't think that it's hurt high school kids as much as it's been stated. It has probably put you where you belonged in the beginning anyway.
Coach, so many players are making decisions right now on what to do about these bowl games. I'm not talking about the CFP, but the games that start this weekend. Those decisions have been made, but other decisions. We talked to Jaden the other day, and it doesn't sound like he wants to play anymore. What do you advise when these coaches, when these players and coaches call you trying to get some counsel from your long years of expertise?
Well, where are you drafted at in the NFL? What is the NFL saying about you? If you're a guy that's going to get money, you're a day one, a day two draft pick, and that's pretty much been solidified. In all honesty, it's time for you to move on and get ready for the next level. There's a huge injury risk that you never recover from. There's a lot of money on the table for your career, and that might seem to certain fan bases and certain people to be something that is not for the team or something that people don't want to hear. But these guys do have a financial future that they have to look out for. Now, if you're a day three guy, if you're a guy on the fringe of being an undrafted free agent and a bowl game could help your stock some, then you should consider playing in the bowl game. But these guys, when they get to this point, they have to make the decision that's best for their career.
Coach, I was talking to somebody in Ohio, in Columbus today, and about Marvin Harrison Jr. And you've heard some of these rumors. I mean, there's just massive amounts of money being tossed around. I didn't say thrown around to the player. We've been through the Caleb Williams situation. How real are some of these numbers with the elite players to try to keep them in school?
I think that the 20 million number is preposterous, and I don't think that that's real. And I think that a lot of these guys, when they approach these universities, when they're talking to these college coaches or they're trying to negotiate with collectives, they have a very, very skewed view of what the numbers really are because what's being reported a lot. I don't see any scenario where a guy that's going to get a 20 to $25 million signing bonus in the National Football League comes back to college with the hopes of that a collective or that a group of businessmen is going to pay him that much money to stay in college. You are hearing reports and side conversations of guys not getting paid what they will agree to be paid at several schools in the SEC, at several schools in the Big Ten. There are guys that are complaining about not being paid. I think that when these collectives started, they didn't have any idea how much money it was going to take to keep up with this demand year after year. These collectives are not professional sports franchises. They don't have unlimited amounts of money to give to players. And once a player can secure itself as a first round pick, the collective money cannot compare to that.
Coach, generally speaking, I know you're in the middle of all this with confidentiality, but what is the top dollar that you hear that players are being offered and accepting to stay in
Well,
college?
Well, it's under $1 million for the most part, and
Okay.
most of the time it's going to be under half a million, and with the exception of maybe a couple of special quarterbacks who can change the game. And I think some of these guys go into the portal with an expectation that the money is going to get ridiculous, and it's not. I still believe, and it's been shown that the guys who are doing the best in NIL are guys who sign with very good agents that can secure their marketing deals, guys that go to college fan bases where they can work with the local businesses in those markets to secure deals so that they can endorse products, which is what NIL was intended to do. Also, something that a lot of these young men are missing in a huge social media era is the ability to monetize their social media based on the amount of followers they got and endorse products, is the ability to monetize their YouTube and their Twitch channels. Also, things that you could not do before the NIL rule was passed.
Amazing. I mean, I know you shake your head. You're in the middle of it, but the fact that we're talking about this, even though we knew we would get to this point, is still pretty staggering. Coach, always great to see you. Come back soon.
All right, thank you, Paul.
The one and only Coach Carl Reed telling us how the sausage is really made. We'll take a short break. Your phone calls are next.